You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions
WeeklyTrek,
episode 36.
Hey, Weekly Trek listeners, welcome to this very special Christmas / Hanukkah / holiday themed episode. Thank you for sticking with us through the end of 2018 and the start of 2019. It was such an eventful year. Weekly Trek started this year, so a lot happened. But because we, the Tricorder Transmission hosts, are away from our microphones through this holiday season, while we pick up other hosting jobs, like hosting our families, hosting our friends, hosting our dogs that look ridiculous yet adorable in their foam antlers, we decided to record a special two-part episode just for you to reminisce fondly over all of the Star Trek that happened this past year. Joining me today are two delightful gentlemen, Jamie McGregor and John Krikorian. I hope you enjoyed our previous part one of the Christmas themed / holiday themed Weekly Trek. We talked about three of our favorite Trek moments in 2018, and we deep dove into some of how good Star Trek was all of last year and how good it was to us personally. So make sure you listen to that. That was our part one. But in this episode, we will talk about three of our favorite news items that happened in 2018, what we are most looking forward to in 2019, and we'll finish out with a favorite piece of merch that we'd like to see in our homes, under our trees, under our piles of Blu-rays. That's a reference from the first episode. That would bring us more joy. So we'll start with Jamie. Jamie, what was one of your three favorite news items that happened in 2018?
So one of my favorite news items for 2018 was definitely the premiere of What We Left Behind, the DS9 documentary. I was a very proud Indiegogo backer, and while I haven't yet seen it because I wasn't able to go to any of the premieres, just reading about the fact that What We Left Behind launched and people loved it so much has made me very relieved and excited to watch it next year when it does get finally released to Blu-ray and streaming for everybody around the world. I think there was also a premiere at Destination Star Trek, as well as the Indigo backers premieres. They had a world premiere in the UK in Birmingham, and again, all of the reaction from everyone was so positive about the documentary and the fact that if you were a die-hard or hardcore DS9 fan, you would not be disappointed by this particular documentary, which I'm delighted to hear. So for me, one of the great news items was the fact that that documentary is finally, it's been a long time in the can, it's been a long time in the works. I think Ira Stephen Bear was making a bunch of jokes about the fact that it took 7 years to make the show and it's taken him 5.5 or 6 to build a 90-minute documentary, but I can't wait to see it. And anyway, that was one of my big moments for the year.
That's great. John?
I completely agree. I think it is going to be a spectacular documentary. I cannot wait to get my hands on the Blu-ray, which I think is what one of my prize levels was as a sponsor of it. So I think it's just going to be a fantastic thing. And what a glorious moment for me, because I just finished my Deep Space Nine rewatch, and then I'll be able to go directly into this documentary. So I think it's going to be wonderful.
What was one of your three favorite news items that came out in 2018?
Well, for me, I think one of my favorite announcements was the Lower Decks announcement. And this is a little bit personal because I was one of those guys in the lower decks. I was one of those guys who was way down at the bottom of the ship, scrubbing the nacelles and climbing around the Jeffries tubes in the real life United States Navy. So I think that this is the kind of show I've always wanted to see. I hope that it has a good mix of Star Trek content and also of the plight of these unnamed people in the bowels of the ship who keep everything running while the captain is having his chicken sandwich and cup of coffee way up on the bridge.
And tea Earl Grey hot.
Yes.
That was such a. I remember the creator of the show pitched it apparently by saying, I want to make a show about the guys who insert that little yellow pod that turns into a banana into the replicator when somebody orders it from a replicator. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. I believe it's the co-creator of Rick and Morty, so you can definitely expect some good yucks for sure. It was also fun to break that down on Twitter for me personally. I got to do a little thread about, why Star Trek needs a show like that to survive, why we do need that kind of animated comedy to diversify and expand the universe of Star Trek, and how it's going to work, or how it's only going to work when we have something that is all encompassing comedy, horror, sci-fi, what have you.
Shashank, it's just to go a bit further on that, I notice at the moment the movie that's getting really, really good reviews is this Into the Spider-Verse animated movie,
That's
which
right.
seems to be very, very different in kind of tone and content to all the Avengers stuff and the Spider-Man movies that are coming out as part of the Marvel-Sony deal currently. I think do you see that as a good example of what we're talking about here, where Marvel can branch into different aspects of its properties?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because in my thread, that was the prime example is that look at Marvel. That's the only example we have of how a big universe can work. And that happened because they're going into every genre. They're doing animated movies, they're doing heist movies with Ant-Man, and then they're doing these serious team ups with Avengers. Then they're doing mythology based franchise with the Thor movie. So that's how you do it, is by diversifying, by expanding into different genres, and still having that through line of Star Trek, just like Marvel does with Marvel.
So John, do you have any plots that you would like to see from your experience in the bowels of a ship that you would like to recommend to the lower decks riders?
The only thing I want to see is a scene where the ship is engaged in some sort of incredible life or death struggle, and the guys and ladies that are down at the bottom of the ship know nothing about it, and they just know there's a big battle going on, and they're just like, "What? Now we got to get the regulators back online. Yeah, we got to get it done. Why? I don't even know what's happening. What is happening right now?" and like they're never told about like some bigger because up in the bridge, it's always like this high stakes. The universe is on the edge of destruction. We have to tech the tech immediately, otherwise this thing will happen that will end all life in the universe. And there's somebody down in the lower deck who's like trying to like get the replicator working, and he's like, oh man, I got to fix this replicator. And meanwhile, like the ship is being rocked by explosions, and like, what's going on? I don't know, man. I just got to fix my replicator. That's the moment I want to see in the show.
I can see some poor gardener, he's putting the manure around in the arboretum, and all of a sudden we go to red alert and the ship starts going everywhere, and you kind of go, geez, he could do with a little bit more notice, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, that kind of stuff. I like it.
It's not that different from a guy being in the shower while the new Picard show is announced. No.
That's a sick burn.
Yeah,
Shashank, that's bad.
I'm adding your name to my whiteboard, Shashank Avaru.
and maybe we take him to the medical unit where we will see an episode of Lower Decks for that burn. But let me get into one of my
you need to listen
favorite.
to episode 1 of this this Christmas
That's right.
Holiday two-parter.
Yeah, those are Inside Baseball episode 1 references right there. But one of my favorite news items from the year was learning that UCLA is going to name a theater after Leonard Nimoy. That a set of very generous donors decided to rename one of their theaters in that university to the Leonard Nimoy Theater. That was just such a delight. And I know I'm sure on that episode when we covered it, we said everything there was to cover. And most people might have forgotten about it. But it was such a beautiful, touching moment that, that just shows how Star Trek continues to reach out and establish its legacy by bringing such joy through one of its leaders, and probably probably the most recognizable Star Trek person out there. And it was such a beautiful moment. Do you guys even remember what I'm talking about? Maybe it was so small that...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I do.
But yeah, that was one of my favorite news moments. Jamie, do you want to get into your second favorite Trek news item that got out in 2018?
Okay, well, I will... I don't know if I'm stealing any of your thunder here, Shashank, but Oddly for me, I'm going to mention the Star Trek versus Transformers comic book group.
That was my second news item, dude.
Oh, really?
Wait, in honor of Jim. Pew pew.
In honor,
man.
Jim. Let's play the Defiant Trek ranks photon torpedoes. I maybe I'll donate my time to you.
No. Go ahead. No, it's much better. Mine is a predictable one. People will think I'll talk about comics. Of course, I'm the comics guy on Tricorder. But it's great that it's coming from you. So please, by all means, give us your thoughts.
I just it seemed such a weird, crazy, and I'll be brutally honest, stupid thing when I first heard about it. Like, I started doing these weekly treks with you and the other hosts on the network, and it came up and it was like, oh, there's going to be a crossover, and I was kind of like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. And you kind of shamed me into actually reading one of them, and I kind of went, wow. You're welcome. And I kind of went, this is actually pretty interesting, and in particular, the art was just so sensational to take something which, I mean, I'm old enough that Transformers is something that I was, as a young person in the 80s, absolutely obsessed by, and in particular, I do like the Star Trek animated series, and the way that they perfectly merged the visual styles of those two cartoons was really good. Now, I've only got the first two issues have made their way to Australia so far. I think there's a third, and I know you did a review a couple of weeks ago on WeeklyTrek that I haven't listened to because I haven't got the comic yet, and I know there's extra editions yet to come, but I just thought that it was an interesting news item that I thought was a bit of a silly kind of thing. And I know that in comics, crossovers happen all the time, and it's a thing in the comic world. But for me, because I'm not really, or at least I wasn't then a comic book reader, and it was kind of like, that seems stupid. But anyway, it turned out it was pretty good. So there you go. That's my perspective on that.
Well, since you also have brought up my second of the three favorite news items, I'll just chime in with my thoughts, and then you can go, John. Rarely do crossovers come out this good. We have the Star Trek X-Men crossover that happened a little while ago. There is also Star Trek Green Lantern, Star Trek Planet of the Apes, a lot of good crossovers, but never has there been a crossover of franchises, at least in my mind, that nailed perfectly what both of these franchises are trying to do, and what the shows or the series or the characters within them mean. It's incredible to see, and these are no spoilers, it's incredible to see Kirk teaming up with Optimus, and it's beautiful to see, Klingons and Decepticons teaming up to fight the Autobots, because of course they would. That is exactly how the animated series and the Transformers animated series crossover would go. So the fact that Mike Johnson and Crash Tester X on Twitter, Philip Murphy, how well they nailed both of these. And just an update in case anybody missed. Maybe this was Star Trek Weekly Trek newsworthy, but I never brought it up. Is that due to the popular demand of the 4-issue series? It was supposed to be a 4-issue crossover, but because people loved it so much and it sold so well, they're doing a 5th issue. So that should tell you a lot about how good this crossover is going. And Jamie, I know you didn't read issue 3 yet, but when you go back and listen to this episode or my review, the last 2 pages of issue 3. I don't know I might have spoiled it on Twitter because a lot of people were retweeting and tweeting me about it and atting me when they were talking about it. But something happens in the last 2 pages of issue 3 that it was originally going to be just my favorite one of my favorite Trek news items or piece of merch. I was finding my way to put that in there somewhere, but something happens that gave me goosebumps. I sat down and stared at those 2 pages for 10 minutes. I'm not gonna lie. It was just beautiful. But lot of thoughts there. I didn't mean to throw all of that out there. But John, as someone you've stated before often that comics are really not up your alley. But was that something you cared for at all? I did appreciate your Optimus Prime impression.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I have not read these yet. I will read them, but I have not as of yet. So I don't have much to say about it, except to say that I'm open to it. I hope that they are fun, and I love the Transformers, especially the '80s incarnation of it. And I love Star Trek, so it might be the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup of comics. Just the perfect mix of these two things, which are fantastic. So I'm waiting for my chance to have the chance to read them, which I will because I'm going on a vacation here in a little bit, and I do have them saved up. So I'll maybe have some thoughts at a future time.
What was your second of the three favorite news items that happened in 2018?
I want to say, see, this one I'm a little bit bittersweet about. It's Nick Meyer's interview where he was talking about his Khan series. And I want that series so bad, like from the bottom of my Star Trek fan soul. I want that series so badly. And it sounds like it's not being made or worked on currently. So I felt like that could be something which is just spectacular, especially given Nick's golden hand with Star Trek in the past. So
it was a miniseries, right? Three night event.
Yeah, it was going to be a 3-night or a mini series of some kind focused on Khan and on SETI Alpha 5, maybe covering a little bit of the eugenics wars, depending on how they go with it. We don't really know how much of the backstory it was going to cover. But
they even went and took the trademark for it, right? The SETI Alpha 5.
Yeah. They protected it legally, which doesn't mean much, right? I mean,
right.
That doesn't mean that there's anything happening. It just means that they took some preliminary steps to protect it in case they wanted to go forward with it. But I felt like that could be the Trek that I would love the most. And I am just waiting to hear more. So I think that that sense of optimism that I have will never let me down. So I'm going to be pining away for that and sending my positive vibes towards Mr. Meyer and to Alex Kurtzman to get him to approve this.
Pick up the phone.
Forward. Yep. Make that show happen, guys. We're waiting here. It's going to be spectacular.
In a world where Lower Decks is happening, I'm sure this is something that will eventually happen, given that you're not alone. That's a show that I want to see. I'm sure Jamie, with his interest, I can tell, sure that he'll want to see. And the way we vote with our dollars and the love we show for Picard and stuff that comes out in the future, Lower Decks, whatever is planned in the future, the Section 31 series or what they're going to do there, all of that I'm sure will contribute to whether this will actually come out, and I have a good feeling it will. Jamie, what is your third of three favorite news items of the year?
Well, this one, little left field. I'm going to talk about the Megan Fox speculation, and this is one of my favorite news items because it just turned out to be total rubbish.
I've just fallen into the mirror universe right here.
I think it was just this delightful example of everyone getting excited about some crazy clickbait that turned out to be nothing. And for me, that's how good's that? So, here was half the Trek universe. I know I was already casting her as MRES, we need a replacement for on the bridge, Let's
meow.
Let's put her meow. Yeah, totally. Let's put her onto the bridge of the Enterprise, and for Star Trek 4, away we go. We don't need Chris Hemsworth. We don't need Chris Pine. We're already good to go. And it turned out to be a photo of something that somebody did on the social media account, and she has absolutely no idea what anyone's talking about. And I just think that either that or this is, one of the great misdirections of all time, but I'm fairly sure this is just nonsense, and it got turned into clickbait, which people paid attention to. So anyway, I love those kind of things where you have these news items that turn out to be just absolute garbage. So that's my third favorite news item for the year.
That's fantastic.
John, do you have any thoughts?
I don't even know what to say. I think that Jamie said it all. I have nothing further to say except I look forward to Megan Maress playing the character, and I think she'll be Megan Maress Fox. That's what I'm going to call her from now on. So fantastic. Well done, Jamie.
Okay, just one thing. It's hilarious. It's incredibly funny. Ironically enough, I was on that episode when it did come out, that little piece of news, and I was one of the people who jumped into the speculation. And then I was also on the episode where it was debunked. So that was a fun journey for me. But it's still telling that, the official Star Trek account shared that. And you're right, they could be just pranking with us, but the fact that they shared it and they went in, they wouldn't do that for anything else. These fan speculations happen all the time. But the fact that they went in there and they shared it and they retweeted it and they, got it out on their
Don't justify it now, Shashank.
I'm just saying that happened. People should remember that if they go back and listen to our ridiculous speculation and then our debunking where we held our hat in our hands. You should remember that the only reason why we validated it was because our very own loving Star Trek, this entire podcast about Star Trek, and they shared it, so we thought it was newsworthy. But while I continue to laugh and mute myself, John, what is your third of three favorite news items that happened this year?
My third news item is a real news item, not fake news, like what Jamie had selected, and it was everything around the Ethan Peck casting announcement as new Spock. He, first of all, is related to Hollywood royalty. He seemed like he was just so appreciative and eager of being cast in the role. And there were these beautiful pictures of him meeting Leonard's family, which I just thought was so beautiful. And I think it was just a really nice down payment on what we can hope to expect from his performance as younger Spock in season 2 of Discovery. It was just a delightful announcement and positive all around. And I'm completely jazzed to see what he brings as well as what Anson Mount brings to season 2 of Discovery. But it just seemed like a total delight, everything about it.
Hear, hear.
And when we reported on John, you and I, we kind of got into a little bit of a social media misadventure, didn't we? People mistook that we said something when we really didn't say it. That was an interesting little...
Oh, avocado toast. Yes.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. People thought we were being critical when in fact we were not. And that was all three of us. I think Jamie was on that episode as well. No, it was...
Uh-oh. Was that hipster Spock?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. It was hipster Spock. And we were merely...
lighten up, people.
Yeah, we were just having a lighter moment, and I think people took it out of context on Twitter. Where I'm totally on board with Ethan Peck. I don't know how good of an actor he is. I have no idea, but we will see what he does in season 2. I'm very excited and very happy that he was cast in that role, and I can't wait to see what he does.
Yeah, me too.
It's going to be crazy for sure. It's going to be interesting. My third of three favorite news items is not really one news item as much as it is an assortment, a plethora, a cornucopia of news items. And it's a shout out, a tribute, a sad swan song, a farewell letter. Although probably not a farewell, because I'm sure we'll get a bunch of these in the future, but someone else will report on it, is Carl Urban going to every convention and talking about Star Trek 4 and how he doesn't know what is going to happen with Star Trek 4. I will admit it, on every weekly trek that we had that, Carl Urban going to a convention, insert name of convention, and him saying essentially, I want it to happen, but I don't know if it's going to happen. Just a farewell letter, an acknowledgement of his effort to go into every convention, and news articles picking it up and talking about, Carl Urban said Star Trek 4 might happen, that headline, while he went to every convention that he went to, was on stage and said, I don't know, but I would like it to happen.
It became a news item every single week, right? I don't think you could get through an episode of Weekly Trek without mentioning the fact that someone from Star Trek 4 would like it to happen but doesn't think it's going to happen, and it might happen and they'd like it to happen.
We actually had that removed, I think, from from our previous episode where we had a John Cho article talking about how he's optimistic for Star Trek 4.
And that just dovetails lovely with your optimism about Star Trek 4. How optimistic are you, Shashank, about Star Trek 4?
At this point, there is so much happening. Just give me my Sulu a Star Trek story. That'll be my Carl Urban going to a convention and talking about Star Trek 4, is me finding every avenue to talk about. Give me Sulu a Star Trek story. Let's make it happen, you guys.
I hear.
I think we need a supercut on YouTube of someone just putting together all the Carl Urban clips of him on stage talking about Star Trek 4. I think it would be hilarious. Because it'd be the same thing over and over again for like 40 minutes.
And the best part is we reported almost every one of those. The only time we never reported is, I guess, we had too many news articles and we just couldn't get to them in 30 to 45 minutes. So, yeah, just
And the great thing is we've reported it again on this episode.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic.
Yes, we have.
This is a meta report. It's an Inception level reporting of us reporting on the reporting of Kala have been talking about Star Trek 4. So that's my third of three favorite news items of 2018.
How good.
This is too meta for me. Let's move on.
Okay, moving right along. Just a couple more things before we get out of here. Jamie, what are you most looking forward to from the universe of Trek in 2019?
Well, I'm looking forward to Star Trek 4, Shashank, which I hear may happen, and I'd like it to happen, but it may not happen. And maybe if those salary negotiations with Hemsworth and Pine work out, then we might hear more about it next year. In all seriousness, though, a couple of things I'm looking forward to for 2019. I'm on board with excitement around Lower Decks, so I'm excited to see what that becomes, and I imagine we're going to find out more about it through 2019. It may not actually premiere next year, but it certainly will find out more about what direction it's headed and what it's going to be a bit more about next year, so I'm excited to find that out. I'm going to put the Picard series to one side because I think that's obvious. It's a little too obvious, but really, if we're going to go with the obvious stuff, Discovery Season 2, I am really excited for it, and I'm hopeful around the more adventurous, more positive, more tonal change for the show, away from the kind of negativity, well, not necessarily negativity, but the darker aspects of Season 1 Discovery. I am a little concerned that the stakes are going to be a little too high. It'll be the Enterprise and Discovery trying to stop the destruction of the entire universe or something like that. I'm never a big fan of when the stakes are massively too high.
Are they going to be the only ship in the quadrant? Because they always have to say that line whenever the universe is at stake.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we've got to save the entire universe, and everyone else is conveniently not around. What I am also looking forward to is seeing more of the B characters. Your bridge crew, Again, the Lower Decks characters of Discovery, I want to see more about them and find out more of their stories, which I gather is coming in Discovery Season 2. So anyway, there's a bunch of things that I'm looking forward to for 2019. What about you guys?
John?
Just following up from one thing on Jamie's, which is I want to see an episode that gives us the backstory of Lieutenant Commander Arium. That's my, and I agree, I want to see all of them, but that's the one I most want to hear about. I want to know what's up with that.
Have you read Star Trek Discovery Succession, John, which is the comic book series that follows? It's kind of a prequel. It's an in-betweener between season...
but it's mirror universe, though.
True, right?
So
but
that doesn't tell me anything. I don't know.
Right,
It's mirror universe. I'm skeptical.
It's just I think of
That's some great comic book nerd talk. From you two. That's awesome. Great work.
All I'm going to say is that, that really gives Arium an entire series to shine. I think that's Arium's story, that Discovery Succession. It's kind of led to believe the way they marketed it to be Michael Burnham's, the mirror universe Michael Burnham story, but I think it's Arium's. And I don't know, you've read it, right? Have you?
I read up to I can't talk about it without being too spoilery, but I read up to a certain point. So I know why she's featured in it, and I know what happens there, but I didn't read the follow-on from that yet.
Right, just throwing that out there. But yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. John, what are you most looking forward to in 2019?
Well, this might be a little bit saccharine for all of you, but what I'm most looking forward to in 2019 is interacting with all of the amazing Star Trek fans that I've had the opportunity to interact with historically because of this podcasting thing that I'm doing and getting deeper into the fandom. So while I've been a Star Trek fan my whole life, I've only been doing this podcasting thing for since February of this year. And what it has done as a byproduct of that is given me an opportunity to talk to a lot more fans on Twitter, on Facebook, and so forth. And that has probably been the number one thing for me is engaging more deeply with all the other fans out there. And I'm looking forward to doing more of that as I do more of my show, Trek Profiles, and as I guest on other shows like this on WeeklyTrek and whatever other podcasts I'm on. And at STLV, and I'm sure that when the Let's Make a Deal thing comes out, I'm sure people will have something to say about that. So I am just looking forward to talking to all of you more, and I think that's been just an unalloyed good of this past year, and something to look forward to in 2019.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. No, it's not saccharine at all. It makes sense, as for three people who do podcasts. So for all of us who interact with these people, with the fans on Twitter or wherever we talk to them, it's great, and that positivity does give us a lot of joy. Now I'm looking forward even more to your Let's Make a Deal episode, John. But let me close this one out, and I'm sure you guys will say, "Oh, of course he chose that one." But what I'm looking forward to most in 2019 is the Q conflict. Man,
Yes, thank you. I got in there first.
yes, I'm looking forward to adding the biggest crossover that has happened in Star Trek. As a comic book nerd, you'll know that everybody has a favorite crossover. They have a favorite, what you'd call a comic book event. For a lot of people, it's Infinity War, there is Secret Wars, there is Crisis on Infinite Earths. Those are what you'd call comic book events. Something that happens within the universe of a franchise that pulls in every character from across the universe, and they all have to deal with a huge conflict. And I am so delighted and lucky and blessed in my life that I get to experience the Q conflict, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's a 6-issue miniseries coming out from IDW that pulls in the crew from TOS, TNG, DS9, and Voyager. And they're all going to fight it out. From what I have read, they're all forced to be in conflict with each other because Q has directed it, and Q wants this to happen. And nothing is known yet. It's going to be exciting. There is a beautiful J.K. Woodward cover that you can find. But yeah, that is going to be I've not read anything about it except for a little synopsis and that cover, but I can already tell it is going to be one of my favorite things in 2019. And you know me so well, Jamie. You said it before I did.
We know where your passions lie, Shashanka, and I think those of us who are interested in that kind of stuff are looking forward to it as well. So spot on.
Our friend Shashanka is an open book. We saw that one coming.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But, our last question for this delightful two-part episode, and a great way to get out of 2018 and move on over to 2019 while we welcome Alex Perry as the new host for Weekly Trek. Guys, what is one piece of merch that you'd like to see under your tree or Blu-ray pile, or however you describe where your gifts are? We'll start with Jamie.
Look, I think there's a couple of things that come a close second. The Silver Screen Bottling Company are doing fantastic. They do a fantastic job of coming up with products that would make my holiday season go a lot better than it otherwise might, I think, with their various products. I'd love to see something made by them underneath the tree. I think a honorary shout-out has to go to Hallmark, who developed a tricorder, a gorgeous kind of tricorder holiday ornament this year. And for the Tricorder Transmissions Network, if you're a big fan of that, then you should be getting one of those, because apparently they're gorgeous little holiday ornaments. So that would also be a close second. But for me, the item of merch I'm most interested in from 2018 would be the Eagle Moss model of the USS Emmett Till, which of course is the ship's design done by John Eaves from the imaginary 8th season, from the documentary What We Left Behind, of this imaginary 8th season of Deep Space Nine that the DS9 writers got together, and they've got Ezri Dax as a captain on a new ship, which they named the USS Emmett Till, which we've already spoken about on a previous episode of Weekly Trek. And I just think I really love the naming of that. There's actually an interview with R. Stephen Bear that's been recently put out where he explains a little bit more about the naming of that. So that would be a lovely piece of merchandise that I would like. So there you go. That's my Christmas wish. What about you guys? What do you want to see under your winter solstice tree?
John, go for it.
So I have two. One is something that a wish that came true, and one is something that I am still wishing for. First is the thing that I already have, which is the Bob Peak Gallery was releasing a limited edition seriograph of a giant Star Trek motion picture movie poster. And Bob Peak, for those who don't know, was an artist in the 70s who did a lot of the famous movie posters from that era. And of course, Star Trek, the motion picture, was among them. And so it was a real treat to be able to get one of the 500 that were made in that limited edition. And I love it so much. It's one of the few things I like is the posters, and I like the ships. So I collect books about the ships. I don't actually collect like the little models, but I like ships about the books. So I love that poster, and one of these days I'm going to get it professionally mounted and hung up in a place where I can look at it and admire it every day. I love Star Trek the Motion Picture so much. It's a highly underrated Star Trek film in my opinion, and I was just glad to get that poster, that seriograph, because it looks just so beautiful. The colors really pop. And it's something that just pleases me knowing that I have it. Another thing that I do not yet have is, and this is going to maybe be very personal or unique to me. I doubt many other people would pick this, but it's the Star Trek Golden Books series for kids that is coming out. Now, it might be because of my particular age, but I think that many people, especially in the United States of my age, had those golden books as a kid. I think many people of my age would remember having them. And it just tickled me to death that they were coming out with these new golden books. And the art in them just looks wonderful. And they're just nice and bright and clean and really just wonderful and very reasonably priced as well. So they're just so delightful, and I think I am probably going to get the whole series. So that's my picks.
Nice.
Great. I'm going to keep mine short. No, for sure, mine might be a little controversial, but I don't care. It's going to be these. I don't know if you remember a few weeks ago, Star Trek Into Darkness Select figures from Diamond Select were announced. They were these Diamond Select action figures. You get, I think, about 6 or 7 inch standard size Spock and Kirk with their Into Darkness outfits. So I'm pretty excited to get those. Those are going to be my favorite. I know they haven't been released yet. They'll probably be released in mid 2019, but they're one of those future figures I'm looking forward to getting. So if I could have it under my tree right now, I would, my non-existent tree. But
as Planet Earth's #1 Star Trek Into Darkness fan,
yes,
you deserve those, Shashank.
Thank you, sir. I've stated on multiple occasions, it's my favorite Kelvin movie. It's my second favorite Star Trek movie. And yes, the Star Trek Into Darkness Select figures, the fact that Diamond Select is giving them their due and finally announcing those. I get fingers crossed. Hopefully I will get a John Harrison / Khan figure at some point. But until then, I will be happy with my Spock and Kirk from Into Darkness. So that'll be my pick for my favorite piece of merch that I'd like to see under my tree.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, guys, this was fun, and a little inside baseball again. We recorded 3 episodes this time around, so this was a 2-parter, and then we recorded another Weekly Trek. So first off, thank you so much for being patient and just trekking on with me and going on this adventure and getting all of these in. I honestly didn't think we were going to do it. I thought one of us was going to fatigue out, and I thought that one of us would be me, but I'm glad I didn't. And I thank you both for your dedication. While we go back and hopefully get some sleep, all 3 of us, just let us know where people can find you. Jamie, where can people find you on social medias?
First off, big thanks to you, Shashank, and also for you doing what you've been doing for Weekly Trek for most of this year. You've been the most regular host that's been on the show, and it's been fantastic. I know Alex is going to take over in that particular role, but I've certainly enjoyed listening in each week, especially to the episodes that I wasn't on, and you've done a fantastic job. So thank you for that, and thanks to John for the couple of episodes that we've been on, and I've had a great time in the last little while recording these 3 back-to-back-to-back episodes with you guys. So I hope all of our listeners are having a good holiday season as well, listening to these episodes. Anyone who wants to at me about anything terrible I've said over the course of these 3 episodes can find me at JMacRef on Twitter, JMAC_REF. I hope everyone has a fantastic holiday period, and we'll see you in 2019 for more Star Trek on the Tricorder Transmissions Network. Over to you, John.
JMacRef and Slaver of the Bees. So I am John, and you can find me at Trek Profiles pretty much everywhere. And for some bizarre reason, I have to point this out, that I've recorded 2 podcasts this week, and both of them have coincided exactly with Vegas Golden Knight games. And this is causing me such stress, I cannot even describe it to you. So I am going to erupt out of this room as soon as this podcast is over and get in front of the TV so I can see my beloved Golden Knights. So that is
Go Golden Knights.
That's it. Go Knights, go. So that is my Christmas wish for right now, is success for the Golden Knights, and peace, love, and joy, and happiness for every single person listening to this, and the very best of things in the new year for all of you, and live long and prosper.
Yeah, well, Jamie, thank you so much for those kind words. You're very, very kind. And I did enjoy listening to all of the Weekly Trek episodes, both the ones I was on with you guys, ones I wasn't on. Thanks to you, thanks to Ali, thanks to John, just thanks to everybody who was on Weekly Trek and made it happen. And I look forward to listening to Alex's take on the news. I'm sure he'll do a great job.
He will. He's got some big shoes to fill.
I'm excited. The reason why I'm leaving is so I could go and hopefully do, I don't know if I can say anything yet, but hopefully do some more shows on the network. So the entire reason why I'm leaving is so I can dedicate my attention to something else that is new and exciting. And I look forward to hopefully getting everyone on board when those come out. But until then, I have been Shashank Avaru. You can find me on @gutter_hero on Twitter. I talk about a bunch of nerdy things, DC, Marvel, Star Trek, Star Wars, everything nerdy under the umbrella. I will talk about it. That's it for Weekly Trek. We'll see you guys in 2019. Please enjoy your holiday season. I hope you have a good one. I look forward to your answers on all the questions that we threw around and the discussions that we had. I would love to hear what your favorite Trek news items have been, your favorite Trek moments, what have you. But that has been Weekly Trek. I have been Shashank Avaru, and on behalf of John and Jamie, live long and prosper.